Hey everybody, Brendan here. Welcome back to a new video. This is the final game of my 13th tournament. Why is it the final game? Well, I actually decided to stop this one a little early because I was doing a big tournament right after this. So that's why it actually ended after 3 games instead of the normal 5, which is what this club normally does, is 5-round tournaments. So let's get into the game. We see b3, knight to f6, bishop to b2, g6, and this allows bishop takes f6, which is something I'm normally really happy to go into. I like it when, they're playing bishop b2 and they just trade off the bishop. Like, that's their first few moves as white. That just doesn't really feel like it's anything special, even though maybe it could be a problem. As far as I looked at it, Black seems to equalize quite comfortably, but I could be wrong. So e3, bishop g7, they don't end up trading. They go for a double fianchetto system after d5, bishop g2, castles, and c5 here. So I'm just going for a classical system where you just control the center, develop your pieces, don't do anything crazy because you don't need to. They gave up the space, take some space, and see what happens. Castles, knight c6, and d3. I played b6 with the idea of also going for the double fianchetto. I just have more space, so I was just trying to argue that I felt a little bit more comfortable here. Knight bd2, bishop to b7, rook to c1, e6, just to defend everything, and now the move c4 is played. And I think c4 is actually a bit of an issue for my opponent here, because there's actually a tactical problem. The move rook c1 was a little loose, tied with c4, because of what I played in the game. Knight b4. Knight b4 actually just wins a pawn, which is really surprising, because if they play a3 and knight takes d3, we don't have to worry about the knight getting trapped. We can just take on c1 or on b2 here. And of course, if they play something like d4, well, now we can take the a pawn and just bring our knight back to b4 here. I think actually maybe even more precise might even be to take first and then take on a2. Let me see here actually. I'm curious. Maybe take on a2. Sorry. No, yeah, take on a2. Might actually be best here because it does attack the rook. My apologies. Yeah, so yeah, queen e2. Knight takes a2 because they're defending d3. Can't take that pawn. Rook back to a1 and knight b4. So why did they play rook c1, right? They played rook c1. We took a pawn. They played rook back to a1. So we just gained a few moves as well. Rook f c1. D takes c4. The problem is I didn't want to allow any like d4 where maybe c5 gets weak. So I took on c4 here. D takes c4 and knight d3. And this move I was really, really happy to get in. Why is that? Well, first off, they fianchetto, right? That's pretty important. But also they fianchetto both ways. And as you can see, they're kind of eyeing each other. And sure, being a pawn up is good, but they have a lot of activity. With the move knight d3, what I'm trying to do is to take one of their bishops for one of my knights. And that's kind of forced here. Otherwise, they give up an exchange, which winning material is a huge deal. And if they also do give up the exchange instead, they have to play something really sad like bishop c3 or bishop a3 to avoid their bishop getting taken. But okay, they played rook c2. I took, and they didn't even take back, funnily enough, which just gave me a full piece. If they take back, I think they were worried of a move like knight to d7 here, which does just win an exchange anyways. So rook to b1, unfortunately this just loses a piece though. The game is practically over. I played queen d3 instead of knight to d3. I thought this was a really interesting way to convert the position. Because, well, after queen to d3, they don't have time for something like bishop f1 to reinforce. For example, here, mistake would be this, because now our knight's trapped. But we can defend it like knight d7 actually, so is it really that bad? It is bad if you just see, oh, sorry, they played knight f1. But if you see the move queen takes c2, you just realize that, this is clearly best. But yeah, they played knight to f1. I took on e2, rook takes e2, and now knight to d3. So I got to simplify the position where I won a piece and traded queens and now there's no counterplay left, and this is just completely winning. Rook to d2, knight to b4. I was completely prepared to see any rook invasions, because the only place I can go is d6, and that doesn't really do anything too spectacular. Instead, they double up on the file. I play knight c6 now, which covers the d8 square and now prepares rook to d8. They play knight to h4. I play knight to a5, allowing bishop takes b7, because, hey, when you're up so much material, just trade pieces off, and, well, that's just going to win you the game. Takes, rook to b1 now, a5 to prevent b4. Just looked like a good move. And also, all of my pieces are perfectly placed to cover everything on the d-file, so they can't even infiltrate. Rook to e2. I'm not really sure what the point of this move was. I'm pretty sure maybe it was to avoid any trades on the d-file. But I played knight e4 because this just has a huge threat of knight c3. After rook e to e1, knight c3 anyways, rook b c1, rook a to d8. The knight's just well placed. It prevents them from ever trying to prevent us from controlling the d-file, and it's just never going to be able to be taken unless they can play like this and then this. And, well, by then we can just move our knight away to a lot of different squares. Actually, maybe not a lot of different squares, just d2, or d1 actually. So I guess if you consider 2 to be a lot, then sure. They played e4. I played rook to d3, e5, rook f to d8, and sure, they were able to block the attack of my bishop, but it's not really the biggest deal here because, again, I'm up a piece and a pawn. So f4, knight to a2, and the idea of this is just to remaneuver to b4, rook a1, knight b4, and my opponent actually just resigned here because there's just too many threats all the time, and this is just lost. Like, first off, b3 is hanging, so they have to go and defend that. There is also the threat of knight c2, but after they play something along the lines of rook to b1, one of the easiest ideas that I see off the top of my head, which might not even be best, is rook c3, the other rook to d3, and just taking the b pawn, or also rook d7, playing knight d8 to c6, and maybe even d4, which again attacks the pawn. It's just very hard to play this position as white because you're down so much material, you're losing. Anyways, that's the game. I think the most interesting thing from it was the opening here, where we go all the way back and we see, yeah, rook c1 just felt wrong. And I think the biggest thing to remember here is, do you need rook c1 for a position like this? And the answer is just no. I think rook c1's too early. C4 is a perfectly playable move instead. Rook c1 does nothing to help this move because it's defended by 2 pawns, and knight b4, now you just play something like queen to e2. And there's nothing really that fascinating going on here. It's just a position. So that was the game, and thank you guys for watching this tournament. You guys will see my new rating at the end slide there. And yeah, that's it. Thanks. Bye.